all, and welcome back to another thrilling episode of Off the Dome. I'm your humble interviewer, Jordan Brown, and with me for the very first time is our stunning skeleton. Say hi, stunning skeleton.
Hi, stunning skeleton.
Dan, thank you so much. This is so exciting. I will admit I'm only 2 episodes into Goblin Mode. I have a 3-year-old, and I work from home, so my podcast / watching time is very limited. But I've made it at 2 in, which I'm pretty proud of.
The fact that you have made it through 2 with a 3-year-old is amazing. I have a 1.5-year-old, so yeah. I can't. Whatever podcast and viewing time I get is just like bits and bobs in the dead of night when he's finally asleep.
Yeah, our big thing right now is we just joined the Y, and they will watch him for us, and he gets to go out on a playground, and so then I can listen to a podcast while I work out, and that's the only shot I've got.
Fantastic.
Yes. I want to start, though, with something obviously very serious. What are 100 things Goblin Mode fans should know and do before they die?
I'm glad you asked, because I actually did prepare a list. Number 1 is that death is only the beginning. This show really teaches you that the end of your life could be the beginning of a brand new chapter. Playing with some undead characters who wanted to go a bit outside the mold here. Something to do is listen to the show while you're on the elliptical at your local YMCA.
Hey, nailed it. It's so funny. My wife does not care about actual plays, but I told her I was interviewing you, and she was like, "We've watched so many of his videos." And I was like, "Yeah, I know. You have been such a staple in our household as we like struggle mightily with a new season of a show we love is back. What happened 2 years ago, the last time we saw an episode? Dan's here to save us."
I'm always happy to help, and thank you for watching. I appreciate it.
But yeah, I've really loved the first 2 episodes of Goblin Mode. Obviously, fans of Dimension 20 will recognize Amy and Danielle. You and Jason are also truly so. I mean, everyone is fantastic in it, but also such an incredible set, sound design, everything about it is really just top notch, and has that really fun, like you said, a really interesting storyline of what if minions had to get some level of agency in their life after the BBEG is gone, and it's so fun to watch. Even the first episode, those such silly characters take those sudden serious turns as all of your best friends are dead.
Yeah, definitely was not expecting Amy to immediately put us through the emotional meat grinder, but you know what? I'm glad she did, because it made us have to think on our feet and roll and think about how these otherwise cartoonish characters would react if they were 3-dimensional beings with interiority and lives.
Yeah, it's so fun. And tell me, walk me through Fibs, where our beautiful wizard skeleton boy came from.
Yes. So the idea for Fibs, well, first I came up with the idea of, okay, we're playing minions in a dungeon. My natural inclination as a player, as I'm sure that many people can relate to, is what does the party need? I'm usually the last one to decide my player character, because I want to figure out, okay, what is the party missing? I want to make sure people are having a good time playing what they want. I'm just happy to be playing, period. So at first I was thinking, oh, well, we have a bard, we have an artificer, we need someone who's a little bit tankier. So I kind of imagined this kind of like Skyrim skeleton, just your stock standard skeleton with a rusty iron sword, worn battle tabard from 100 wars ago in a dungeon somewhere. What happens if they become one of the heroes of a story? And then Amy said the most liberating thing, and she was saying, well, why do you need to have a balanced party? You don't. You guys can just be 3 glass cannons if you want. And so then I was like, oh, to me, it's much more interesting having this sort of relationship with Fibs's character. He admires the Dark Lord, the necromancer he looked up to and wants to follow in his footsteps. What if he's an apprentice necromancer? What if he's an apprentice wizard? So then it sort of unlocked this character. I really came to it with the idea of, what if you had this undead skeleton who kind of talked like if the Thing from Fantastic Four was sent to boarding school, but still not quite as smart as he thinks that he is. And I just really latched onto that, just sort of an incongruous this incongruous voice just stumbling through 50-cent words that he doesn't always use properly or understand, but tries his best to, because he feels like you need to be erudite to be a proper wizard.
Yeah, it's super fun. It's also very fun to have a wizard who's not that smart and a bard who's not particularly charming. Just like really swinging right out the gates of just like, what if we don't play? We're not only not balanced. What if we're not optimized either?
Yes, we definitely minned. We did not max, and sometimes to our detriment. But for the most part, I think it's just yielded some extremely enjoyable situations at the table, especially when you succeed on a check that you probably otherwise shouldn't. With Fibs, for example, in the first episode, I mentioned his Herculean 8 strength, but somehow he manages to lift Tippy the goblin on his shoulders long enough for him not to get impaled by spikes. So stuff like that, you really feel like you earned those roles.
Yeah, yeah. Oh man, Tippy. Oh, Tippy.
Near and dear to
Just
my heart. I love him
yeah.
so much.
Do you have guilt for nearly burying him alive in episode 2?
I look, Fibs experiences many things, not guilt, not for that at least. Because in Fibs's mind, he thought that he was doing the best possible thing you could. Oh no, poison gas is going to ruin my friend's day, potentially kill him. What if I make a impermeable coffin of dirt that will protect him?
And
Maybe I shouldn't
corpses.
use coffin. Yes, and corpses. That organic matter acts as like a filter. You know how you put like baking soda in the fridge to help with smells? It's like that, but a dead body.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's more just I love how Jason ran with that, and that was one of the things. I've known Jason for years. I worked with him for many years. I've played D&D with him for many years, and I just know that he's such a wonderful agent of chaos. So his decision to actively have a panic attack inside there just delighted me to no end, because it adds so much more texture to an otherwise frightening situation on paper.
Yeah. Yeah, I love a good character choice like that. Like I've played in a game before where a DM was like, roll a wisdom saving throw because you might have a panic attack, and I was like, I'm not rolling for that. I'm having a panic attack.
Yes.
My character is upset about what's happening. Yeah, it's always it's so fun. It's also like I said, that such silly characters. Like I said, having those serious turns, and obviously more serious things to come once you are free of the dungeon
For
and
sure.
out in the world. I'm sure, but like it's just so like it's just like Fibs and Busy, like normalish names. But like Tippy is named because he can't stand upright because he has a pack that's too heavy.
Yes,
and then Tippy has to have an emotional scene about his best friend dying. Is just the funniest thing in the world to me.
Yeah, we want to keep everyone off balance, in Tippy's case, literally. But I just like that we all have these unique relationships, and that stemmed from something that Amy did before we even did our session 0. Before the campaign started, we did a session 0, and before that, she sent around this really thoughtful questionnaire about her characters. And one of the things was, okay, who's a friend they have in the dungeon? Who's an enemy they have in the dungeon? All these questions that you might think to answer yourself if you're putting together a backstory, but I know that not every player likes to show up to the table with like reams of paper of a backstory, a dark and twisted past. This is just, I don't know, it just really helped flesh out the life before we meet these characters in a way that I found very useful and just endlessly delightful when we see elements of this play out. I was just like, okay, what if Fibs had a best friend that was a giant phase spider? And I was not expecting Amy to immediately just punch through my sternum and rip out my undead beating heart. But that she did.
Yes, she did. Oh, Amy's so good in this.
Yes.
The first time playing with her, or have you gotten to experience the joy before?
No, I mean, I've experienced the residual joy through osmosis of just seeing Amy at various tables, both as DM and as a player before. This is my first time actually getting to sit down and play any sort of TTRPG with her. And when we were trying to find the right storyteller for this game, the right game master to steer this, she was the first person I thought of, because she's someone I've known for years. I love the spirit of joy that she infuses into things she does, but also I think this was a great opportunity for her and to flex her, like, just her narrative prowess, because I love how she can paint a scene in one moment with this broad cartoony brush, and then, like we were discussing, hit you with some real emotions in a way that you weren't expecting. And even stuff within those shades of more cartooniness, they can yield emotional dividends later on, as I hope people will come to see as the story progresses.
Yeah, I've fallen so quickly in love with it. Like you said, this idea of like bringing someone to the table that can flesh out the story. It is, I mean, obviously an important project. Geek and Sundry's back, baby. Like, what was it like being like, okay, we're gonna, I mean, a relaunch, is that too strong of a word? It feels like
No,
the
I
right
think
word. Yeah,
I think relaunch is appropriate. We're treating it sort of like this is the next chapter in Geek and Sundry. It's an organization that has had so many incredible eras of storytelling, of gameplay, of creators, and I've been with the company with Nerdist and Legendary Digital Networks it'll be 13 years in November. So I've been here since before it was Nerdist. I've been here through it all, and I've been so privileged to see firsthand the evolution of how a company like Geek and Sundry brought this type of storytelling to new audiences. And we were just really thrilled to have this opportunity to breathe some new life into the channel in a meaningful fashion, apart from just occasional videos here and there. It's been a passion project of mine. We've been working on it for several years. This project in particular, Sagas of Sundry Goblin Mode, is something I've been working on since the very first week I came back from paternity leave back in 2023. So it's been something that's a long time coming. And thankfully, through our partners at Realm, the podcast company with whom we're working on the audio side, we were able to bring this to life in a way that felt like something that we were really proud of and something that we could put our hearts and souls into. And I'm just endlessly grateful for everyone's hard work, both in front of and behind the camera, because this is a true labor of love. And we're really hopeful that this will just be the beginning of many more stories to come.
Yeah, it feels like it is like calling it, Sagas of Sundry. Like feels like you're like, all right, these are our silly.
Yes,
silly is probably too. It's silly, but like silly, serious characters. Yeah, there are other stories
for sure, and I know there are some fans out there who really loved, myself included, the previous Sagas of Sundry series that we did both on YouTube and that we did previously, Madness and Dread, which utilized, it was more like almost an escape room meets a tabletop role-playing game. Game mastered by the amazing Ivan Van Norman, who's over at Darrington Press and Hunters Entertainment. I really love and admire what they were able to do. But for me, the thing that when I was looking at this and trying to think of, okay, what's something that can anchor us in the legacy of what has already happened and also indicate that something is more to come, and Sagas of Sundry, just as a title, stood out to me. To me, it feels like an umbrella of all of the many tabletop role-playing stories and adventures that we can tell, and some will be, a bit more mature, a bit more adult, things like Dread or Madness or 10 Candles. Other stuff will be a bit more joyful or cartoony or comedic, and that's sort of what we're going for with Goblin Mode, especially with this being the 50th anniversary of Dungeons and Dragons. We wanted to sort of pay homage to some of those roots, and it felt like a great way to, hey, a lot of people experienced this game for the first time in the past several years as well, so this can be an on-ramp for new people, and from there we'll hopefully branch out into additional systems as well.
Yeah. I mean, it certainly has like that explosion of popularity, just even in the last few years.
Oh yeah,
feels wild. I've already told the story once today, but the interviews won't air at the same time, so that's fine.
Perfect crime.
Yeah, there was, like, obviously Stranger Things, a huge component of
for
people.
Sure.
And it was a few years ago, I was at this work retreat, and people came up to me who had never played D&D, and they're like, hey, what can you tell me about Vecna? And I was like, my day has come. Like you would like, what would you like to know? How long do you have?
Exactly.
Yeah. I was just like, oh, Stranger Things, the gift that you have given me. My coworkers who are not interested in playing D&D do want the information that I have locked in my brain for too long. Yeah, it feels, I mean, obviously, like, bringing Geek and Sundry back feels like such an opportune time of this explosion of popularity of just the TTRP genre, as people are, especially like looking for, like, like you mentioned, Daggerheart, like things that are people looking for more systems than just D&D. I don't think I have a question in here, but I feel like you're going to say something because you're very good at this.
Well, I'm happy to pick it up, and I agree. Stranger Things really opened the door. I really hope in the 5th season they have someone answer questions about grapple mechanics, because I think there's still a lot of questions around those. But yeah, I think in terms of timing, coming out of the pandemic, Dungeons and Dragons is a prime example of something that experienced a massive boom in popularity, because a lot of people finally decided, you know what, I'm going to finally see what the fuss is about. We're all inside. This gives us a way to explore worlds beyond our own, and I think this has also been concurrent with the rise of incredible storytellers and the continued success of incredible storytellers at other places like Critical Role, like Tales from the Stinky Dragon, Dimension 20, Dungeons and Daddies, NADPOD, so many more. The fact that there are so many that you can list out now, so many actual play adventures for you to experience, there is an embarrassment of narrative riches out there. So it was definitely something that felt like we wanted to return to that world, but we wanted that just to be sort of like the beginning, because we want to make sure that, with Geek and Sundry, we're really trying to focus on some key pillars to us, and that is community, inclusivity, and play. That active play, we want it to feel like, hey, you're coming in, it's game night, pull up a seat at the table, and whatever you want to play, we hopefully will have something for you. So that's the goal here in the long term, but we're starting off with things that we love, like an actual play D&D series, and also a new partnership with the Pokemon Company for the Pokemon TCG, just trying to wet our whistle with some card gaming like we did back in the day as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like Magic the Gathering also seen a huge jump in popularity with Commander decks. I'm assuming, I mean, obviously not capitalizing on specifically that, but that the card gaming boom, obviously important when you're looking at partnering with, I mean, the most popular, I guess, Magic, maybe, I don't know, Pokemon
I think
Magic, they're
both
right?
pretty up there. I don't have the metrics in front of me, but I'd say it's hard to think of a stronger duo in the TCG space than those two. But then you also see these other games that are really shooting up the list in popularity as well. Stuff like the One Piece trading card game, because One Piece, the anime, has also had this gigantic explosion in popularity over the last several years, not just because of the anime, but also because of the Netflix adaptation. So who knows? Look, if you have a card game out there, an RPG, and you want your story told, let's chat. But for now, we're just happy to be doing stuff again, and we just want to be telling interesting stories with interesting people.
Yeah. Speaking of interesting people,
Mm-hmm.
you're like a bigwig at Geek and Sundry. Can you give us any peeks at who might be coming up to join the table next to Jason?
Let's see here. I'm glad that you folks have noticed that we didn't just leave an obnoxious amount of negative space. I can tease that we will have 3 guest stars throughout the season, and I will say that you have interviewed at least one of them. So to find out who, go back and watch all of Jordan's content and see if you can solve the mystery, because I've hidden a clue somewhere in the past. But yes, I don't want to give it away, but
a full year of 52 plus interviews that I have done. One of them is on the show. Great.
Yes. And I can't tell you what platform I hit it on, so make sure you watch on all platforms available, because the truth is out there.
Incredible. Oh, that's so delightful. Yeah, I had, when I interviewed Jason, I was like, is it Dan and Danielle bullying you because they've got the first 3-letter connection? Like, what's happening here? And obviously, he confirmed that you are you two are bullies in the
skeletons got to stick together.
Yeah, that just makes sense. No goblins allowed.
I mean, statistically, I have probably done the most damage to him out of anyone in the campaign so far, and I believe in next week's episode, I don't know when this interview will go up, but whenever episode 6 comes out, I believe there might be a bit more damage done to poor Tippy as well, and I may or may not be involved. So stay tuned to find out.
Oh man, that's so fun. One of the things that I really loved, especially in the first episode, is I love. It's specifically, well, first of all, the unionization of the dungeon So good, so much fun. I love that Phibbs doesn't know the word union, and within 10 seconds clarifies that he is not a scab, though. Truly one of my, like, made me laugh so hard. And then just like, all the flowers to you, good sir, for Thrash Hartley. Just such an A-plus joke.
Yeah, I don't, thank you. That was just buried in the recesses of my brain, and then my like mental wordplay filter was just like, you should autofill with this at this exact moment. I hope it lands. So I'm glad, if for nothing else, for myself, but I'm glad you enjoyed it as well. Yeah, the thing with Phibbs, I sort of touched on a bit earlier, is I always want to have him try and talk in a pseudo professorial manner to a certain extent. Like, he's always trying to be very analytical about the world around him, even when he doesn't exactly understand what's going on. But he is a curious creature by nature. But, you know, if nothing else, he's at least not a scab.
Yeah. Yes. And so important. Yeah. Such a good, all of it's such a good bit. Also, I love, I mean, we touched on Amy, she's so good at all of it. Like, she's like, I guess I've seen a limited amount of her. I wasn't prepared for how quickly she could switch voices. I think just like shocked me of like her having a conversation with herself where I'm like, I don't need her to stop and clarify who's talking. She is a professional actor doing professional actor things.
Yes, I mean, Amy is such an incredible like improviser and storyteller. I had no doubt that she was going to knock it out of the park, but it's another matter entirely to see it firsthand at the table, because you know, we are, I guess we're all sort of agents of chaos, and we definitely throw some curveballs at Amy, which she always manages to catch and throw back to us, and that is just a testament to her ability. And you know, at a certain point, it's just one of those things where, you know, a core principle of improv being yes and, but when you know someone and know their sense of humor, you can throw a no but in there and sort of like not throw them under the bus, but have fun in a really exciting way. And for me, that was a great example of that, is in the very first episode when Jason is describing his best friend Maxwell as a bit old-fashioned, and you can just see the horror dawning on Amy's face when she's like, am I going to have to role play this guy? No, he will be extremely dead.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's wonderful. And I think that some of the NPCs you'll meet as the game progresses, there's a few characters that I just can't wait for, because one of my favorite games to play with Amy as a player, not to disrupt scenes, but just to entertain ourselves, was to ask her, with almost any NPC we meet, what is your first and last name?
But not with the wall monster.
No.
A real. I was so delighted when Amy was like, "You didn't ask his name," and then it came out in a moment later. But it must have been where the lesson was learned. You're like, "Oh, we got to ask everyone their names then." If Amy's
I think
it's Amy's fault.
Exactly. Since that was still like early on, I think we're sort of gauging like, okay, what's the group dynamic going to be? What's the temperament going to be? I didn't want to. Some of these things, it feels like, okay, this is necessary context that we need to set up what's happening. I don't want to try and pull the rug from under her with a stupid bit. Don't worry, I accidentally or on purpose do that many other times, but at least in that moment, I proved that I can occasionally have a modicum of restraint.
Yeah. Good to know that you will throw out the restraint as the story progresses. Of like, no, Amy can handle this. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's. I'm also curious, like, what are the vibes like at the table? They seem very fun.
The vibes, I mean, the vibes are amazing. We had both on camera and off camera. I've known all of these folks for years. This is my first time getting to play with all of them as a group. It was the first time I think everyone in that group had played together. I think Amy and Danielle had played together previously. I had played with Jason previously. And I just knew that they had similar sensibilities that would really gel together. So it's just so fun to see some of the stuff that they come up with, because, you know, Amy, I know that she's just going to paint this incredible canvas and sandbox for us to explore and either build or knock down her sandcastles with. But with Jason and Danielle, They are so wonderful. Their energies are so different but complementary. I think that Jason is just like, he's like your like he's just like an atom bomb that you drop into any scene where he's going to find something preposterous and make it happen. Danielle always has such a thoughtful bent to her role playing and character choices that yields all these really interesting scenarios. And just getting the chance to play with them and bounce off of them and see what they come up with, we just had an incredibly fun time. We laughed a lot. We had some really serious situations, and knowing that we could all trust each other to, you know, pick up what the other person's putting down and run with it and elevate it, and even finding ways to punctuate serious scenes with funny moments, like when Phibbs is reeling from the death of his spider companions. That could easily veer into sort of maudlin territory, but then you have Tippy coming down and saying, "What's going on down there? Oh, the spiders are all dead? Oh, great. Oh, sick. That's awesome." It was like it's the sort of like tension deflation that you needed to let everyone off the emotional hook. So it was just a blast through and through. And thankfully, we felt that we could have this environment to play in because we had such an incredible crew backing us up. Our production team, second to none, and they just made us feel so at ease and just gave us all the tools that we needed. And then seeing what they're doing in post-production as well, led by Matt Karen, our director of post, what he's able to do and elevate through sound design is just making all of those moments, I think, even more resonant for us.
Yeah, I watched the first episode and then I listened to the second episode, and I certainly like enjoyed both experiences, but listening to it, like having the headphones in, I got that like really beautiful sound design a lot stronger than like when it's 10 feet away or whatever on my television. And it was just like really impressive as someone who has like thinking about like NADPOD, thinking about like Worlds Beyond Number, like those like big audio driven podcasts, like having to stand up and stand out in that arena is difficult. And I think Goblin Mode like lands on its own 2 feet of just like, hey, we're also very good at this, which I mean makes sense for the company that it's coming from, that like it's it's not like amateur hour over there, but yeah, I think it turned out really, really beautifully.
Well, thank you. I'm very happy to hear that, and I will pass that along to Matt Karen, who is one of our producers. He is our lead of post production. He does all the sound design as well. Probably the most talented editor I know, and just what he's been able to do. It's so fun to see his creative brain start working on this, because he'll find the exact right sound effect or track that a scene is missing. Like the scene worked for us great at the table, but that just takes to the next level. And we wanted to make sure first and foremost that this works as both a visual experience and an audio experience, because we're putting this out as both a video series and a podcast series. We don't want one to get short shrift.
Yeah. You mentioned Jason's atom bombness and Danielle's thoughtfulness, and one's like I mean, it's almost the same scene, but like thinking of Tippy runs in the second episode, and and Amy's like, "In what direction?" And he's like, he doesn't know. It's just such a like a nuclear choice of just like wherever you want him to be running. And then so shortly after that, Danielle is like, I cast like disguise self so it looks like I'm wearing the ring so that I can pocket the ring so that they don't see it. I'm just like, what a like just such a like not I mean, very different choices, but like you said, such complementary choices and work so well together. And then obviously with Phibbs threatening the lives, I think is a fair assessment of the people who are trying to take over his dungeon.
Look, we've got slight, fight, and flight. There are 3 valid responses in that situation. And yeah, I think that I think we definitely over the course of the campaign take turns shifting through who has what response, but it's just nice because we sort of keep each other in balance. It's we have this natural equilibrium that we try to maintain, just that girds up this veneer of stupidity and silliness that these 3 minions who are way out of their depth are suddenly thrust into.
Yeah. Obviously, like you said, Geek and Sundry has a long history of this. I believe you also have a pretty long history at the TTRPG space, beside just actual play space. What got you into, what brought you to this nerdy little corner of the world?
Yeah, so I've always been a fan of role-playing games ever since I first played Final Fantasy VII on the PlayStation back in 1997. I was an only child. I was really enthralled by the idea of these rich fictional worlds in which to explore. And then talking to my dad, he played D&D when he was growing up, and then I remember they bought me like the AD&D starter set, which was just this like little silly little box. I had no one to play with, so I would just read the manuals endlessly, make up characters and imagine adventures they would go on. And then, thankfully, I believe in middle school, there was a professor there, a teacher there who started the strategy gaming club. So I got exposed to so many things that sparked a lifelong interest in tabletop gaming, role-playing games, stuff like that. I played everything from Mordheim, the old Warhammer like kill team variant for Age of Sigmar, to Cyberpunk 2020, back when 2020 felt like it was going to be the future. So I also got to play D&D there. So I've been playing role-playing games and TTRPGs since I was in like fourth grade. And just the seeing, as someone who's entered into a creative field, and so many people I know, writers, actors, producers, storytellers, authors, so many people I know who have never experienced this, it's so delightful to see when they finally get to play, because it's, to me, one of the purest forms of storytelling. It's a communal, collaborative, emergent form of storytelling. It's a choose your own adventure book where you're collectively writing what happens next, and there's some light math to determine if you're successful or not. And I love that. I love that human connection. I love sitting down together. It's just the purest form of distilling your imagination. And, I think that clip that went viral recently of Deborah Anwal teaching John Bernthal how to play D&D, it's as simple as that. It's, a lot of people I think are really put off by all the source books and all the materials and all the dice and weird shapes they maybe don't understand or know about. And to me, it's just always been about making up a character, doing a voice if you feel like it, and then telling a story together. It can be silly, it can be serious, it can be whatever you want. So the fact that this has been such a fulfilling part of my life for so long, and then seeing what people at a place like Geek and Sundry were able to do, especially I remember like when Critical Role launched in 2015, I was like, oh my God, I don't know why it never really occurred to me that you could use this as a medium for storytelling on a mass scale. It always felt to me like something that was very like intimate and personal, like you sit down in person to do, but finding a way to transpose that framework to a larger storytelling mechanism was thrilling, because it was something I hadn't considered. And just seeing what so many people have been able to do with it now, I find just very creatively rejuvenating and inspiring. And when we got our chance to do something like this with Goblin Mode, I leapt at it. When they were saying, hey, we want to do a new actual play series, I was like, hold on, I've got some ideas. How much time do you have? How many episodes can we do? Okay, let's go for it.
One of the things that I really love also about the episodes is they're like an hour and a half to 2 hours long. Oh, baby, give me something digestible. As we talked about, I don't have time for a 5-hour episode. Please let me be able to finish half an episode while I'm on my elliptical. Like, I'm begging you.
That was something of paramount importance to us, because I think that what's great about the TTRPG space is you can spend as much time or as little time as you want. And, a place like YouTube right now is really prioritizing either super short form content or very long content. We don't want to do 10-hour episodes. We're not trying to do like a video essay deep dive into that. What we wanted to do is, like you said, something that you can either finish in a day's commute, or maybe over the course of a couple gym sessions, or something that feels like if you miss an episode, it's not a Herculean undertaking to get caught up, because we want this, we're telling the story for ourselves first and foremost, but also for an audience. So we want that audience to feel like it's accessible and not something that feels like a chore to listen to.
Yeah. All right. I do have to go back to something else, though.
Of course.
As an only child who fell so deeply in love with Final Fantasy VII, now that's all we're going to talk about. We've talked about Goblin Mode. Who's your three that you're ride or die with? Like, I'm besides Cloud, obviously. Like,
no, of course. I mean, well, Cloud's in there by default.
Yes.
I go back and forth a lot, but my absolute favorite character in the game is Sid Highwind. I love him so much. I've always loved the sort of like grizzled, like pilot sailor archetype, and he just fits that so well. And it's just so heartbreaking when you grow up and you're like, oh, he's portrayed as this old man and he's like 30 years old. You're like, oh my God, what the hell? Why were they so cruel to him? So I'd go with Cloud, Sid, and then I'll probably throw Tifa in there as well. I'd keep Aerith around, but
Right.
she may or may not be around depending on if people have played through Rebirth right now. So I won't spoil anything if you've somehow missed the last 25 years of pop culture.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd say those are probably my three. I am playing Rebirth right now, so I'm actually going with Cloud, Yuffie, and Barrett because it's just been helpful for all of these flying enemies that Cloud can't reach.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my God.
Who
the
are your
flying
three?
enemies. It's Cloud, Barrett, and Aerith. Because I don't understand people that ship Cloud and Tifa. Like, I didn't know that was a thing until like Rebirth came out, and people were like, "No, that's the date." I was like, "What do you mean? The date is Cloud and Aerith. How dare you say anything else?
Oh
that
my
is the
goodness.
date we had in 1997." But yeah, have you finished Rebirth, or are you?
Not yet, because like you, I'm sure trying to play games in fits and bursts. I just got to Cosmo Canyon.
Yeah.
So I'm about, I think, chapter 10, and I'm just currently getting bogged down by all of those flying chocobo challenges where I'm trying to maneuver that glorious bluebird through the flying rings like I'm playing Pilot Wing 64 or something.
Yeah. Oh my God, those quests. Oh, those days when you're like, oh no, and like you land like 1 second after the like platinum time or whatever the top level is, and you're like,
what am I just gonna give up like a coward?
Do it again.
I know.
Yeah. I am really curious how you'll feel about the ending because I have very mixed feelings. I'm assuming you've seen people have been very split.
Yes, I've seen that, but I've done a good job at avoiding spoilers. I have ideas what I've gleaned what might happen, but especially based on the first game and what's happened thus far in this game. But I have not seen what's going to happen yet, but I imagine I will have some thoughts, capital T, when this is done.
Yeah, I'm sure that you will. It is always interesting to return to that world, the first like property I can really think of that made me cry, where I was like, oh no, what's happening? For like in the 1997 video game, just like, and like when playing, what is the first one, Remake? Is that what the?
Yes.
Yeah. I remember the first time you heard her theme, like I'm tearing up, and my wife's like, "What's happening?" I'm like, "I don't know how you don't know this, but you don't, so I'm not going to tell you what happens to her." My wife has somehow missed that. Like she missed that chunk of pop culture, and I was like, "Well, you're along for the ride now. It's not going to be fun."
What a treat to not know what's coming.
Yeah to not have that moment ingrained in your brain forever, to be one of the, like, to spend so much time being like, no, if you get all 12 of the soldiers, a soldier will actually pop out and stop the blade. It's like, that's, I tried everything I could, because
all of these EGM April Fool's Day tips.
Yes, yeah. I still don't understand how those spread in 1997, because we didn't have the internet. We couldn't look them up, but everyone I knew them, and everyone I know now has heard those stories.
There was, I think GameFAQs was available back then. There was Game Sages as well, which I think is now part of IGN. Just a lot of ASCII art tutorials. I remember my dad printed one out at the office when I got stuck at this segment once, and I was like, whoa, how do these people know all this? And then, of course, there's the fine folks at Brady Games who in Prima who did those strategy guides, but they really fell off by the time of Final Fantasy IX.
Yeah. Oh boy, I had a lot of those strategy books as well. Where I was just like, all right, I mean, I have to have 100%. So
exactly.
Like, let's see.
Exactly.
I finished Rebirth, and I think it was, as I was hitting like the final save, it was like, you're at 110 hours, and I was like, I don't feel great about that.
Yeah,
that's a lot of time. But hey, worth the $60 price tag at least.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah,
100%.
Let me live in this beautiful, weird world and hear this beautiful music that I have the Japanese CD from, because I couldn't get an American version of it. Oh, Dan, this is delightful. If folks, this has to be the end, because I've run out of, I can't just keep yelling at you about Final Fantasy VII.
Well, you can, but I understand.
Yes. If folks want, obviously, Geek and Sundry, the easy place to go find Goblin Mode, the Pokemon project, which I'm sure is not the name of it.
It's close. That we'll accept it. It has an extremely long title, Stellar Crown Showdown for short, but the official title is the Pokemon trading card game Scarlet and Violet Stellar Crown Showdown TM. So you can check out that right now. Our first episode with Terry Crews, our second episode with Jacob Batalon from Spider-Man No Way Home. But yeah, there's a bunch of stuff over on Geek and Sundry and more to come.
And if people want to find you on the internet, where can they find you?
You can find me on places like Twitter at Dan Casey, or places like Instagram at Osteoferocious, like the bone disease, but meaner, because at Dan Casey was taken.
I was curious. Osteoferocious is, I think, a stronger brand, although
for sure.
Obviously having your name would be helpful.
Yes, it's I'm like Blade. It's like a daywalker in the world of business and the world of just being an internet goblin.
Goblins all across the board. Everyone go watch Goblin Mode. It's so delightful. Dan, thank you so much. I don't know how to end an interview, so I'm just going to hit stop recording.
Thank you for having me.